Racist cop demands black woman's ID. Then she flashes her NSA credentials. A single street lamp flickers to life on a quiet evening in downtown Baltimore, illuminating a moment that will soon erupt into a confrontation no one saw coming. A black SUV stands at the curb, its driver rummaging through her purse as a patrol car rolls up. In a matter of seconds, an overzealous officer with a history of racially charged complaints barks orders for identification. The driver, unfazed by his aggressive tone, calmly reveals a set of credentials that change the game entirely. This night will spark a chain of events so explosive it leaves an entire city reeling. Alana Mitchell was known among her close circle of friends as a decisive and brilliant mind, someone who embodied a natural calm under pressure. Raised in the bustling city of Baltimore, she had learned from a young age to navigate her environment with caution and poise. Her mother, a school principal named Darlene, had taught her to stand tall in the face of adversity. Her father, a former Marine, instilled in her a sense of discipline and resilience. Both of her parents had marched in protest after protest, demanding justice and equality in a system that felt stacked against them. Their efforts left an impression on Alana that shaped her sense of duty and moral clarity. From the outside, Alana led a seemingly normal life. She went to college at Morgan State University, where she studied computer science and international relations. She maintained good grades, engaged in campus life, and volunteered at a local homeless shelter every other weekend. Few of her peers, however, knew that her academic brilliance had caught the attention of recruiters from the National Security Agency. Even fewer realized that by her senior year, Alana had already been quietly interning at Fort George G. Meade, the NSA's headquarters in Maryland, just a short drive from her childhood home. Upon graduation, Alana began working at the NSA full-time. Her responsibilities were classified, of course, and she became adept at keeping her professional life a secret from most people. She learned the intricacies of cybersecurity and intelligence analysis, a skill set that placed her in pivotal roles during national security briefings. Always under the radar, Alana's unassuming demeanor was precisely what made her so effective at her job. The best intelligence officers often moved unseen, read subtle cues, and blended into any crowd. Despite the gravity of her work, Alana preferred a peaceful life outside of the office. After long hours spent analyzing threat matrices and decoding encrypted communications, she would decompress by walking along Baltimore's inner harbor or indulging in a slice of cherry pie at her favorite diner. Friends and family provided her emotional grounding, and she treasured simple joys. But the weight of her responsibilities never truly left her. She understood that the intelligence she handled could determine the security of millions. On the night that everything changed, Alana had just finished a long day at Fort Meade. She had clocked out later than usual after a particularly complex briefing about emerging cyber threats. Heading home, she navigated the busy Baltimore streets, listening to jazz on the radio to soothe her nerves. Halfway home, she realized her phone battery was dangerously low, and she needed to finalize some personal errands online before midnight. Rather than risk losing power before she got home, she decided to stop by a familiar store that stayed open late. She parked her black SUV near a small convenience store in a less crowded part of downtown. The streetlights buzzed overhead, casting an orange glow on the pavement. A narrow alley ran alongside the building, its darkness a stark contrast to the bright neon sign in the front window. Alana stepped inside, quickly picked up the charging cable she needed, and chatted briefly with the cashier, an elderly gentleman who recognized her from previous visits. They exchanged pleasantries, and she headed back to her SUV, relieved to have grabbed the charger in time. As she slid into the driver's seat, Alana rummaged through her purse for her phone, intending to plug it into the new cable. That was when she saw flashing red and blue lights in her rearview mirror. The sight was so sudden and so unexpected that her heart skipped a beat. She glanced around, trying to figure out if she was mistakenly in a no-parking zone or if something else had attracted the police's attention. Unbeknownst to Alana, the officer stepping out of the patrol car was none other than Officer Randall Hayes, a cop notorious in certain neighborhoods for his suspicious stops and racial profiling. He had been on the force for nearly a decade. In that time, he amassed a troubling record of civilian complaints, alleging harassment and the use of excessive force. Though these grievances never led to serious disciplinary action thanks, in part, to a powerful police union whispers about his conduct circulated persistently among both colleagues and community members. Tall and broad-shouldered, Hayes projected an air of authority that bordered on intimidation. A combination of personal insecurities and deep-seated biases often pushed him to exert his power in ways that left ordinary citizens feeling frightened or humiliated. That night, he had been patrolling the downtown area, his mind restless. A recent argument with his ex-wife over child support had put him on edge. He was itching to reassert some sense of control, and fate seemed to hand him the perfect opportunity. A lone, black woman in an SUV parked near a dimly lit store. Alana watched him approach in the side mirror. Each step seemed deliberate, almost menacing. As a black woman who grew up hearing story after story of racially charged stops, she braced herself for whatever came next. Her parents had always told her how to behave in these situations: remain calm, be polite, never make sudden moves. Alana took a deep breath, remembering her training both parental and professional. Hayes tapped on her window with his flashlight. Alana rolled it down. The first thing she noticed was how he refused to meet her gaze at first, instead letting his eyes dart around the interior of her vehicle as though searching for contraband. His face wore a stern, perhaps even angry expression. "License and registration," he commanded, his tone bereft of any courtesy. It was neither a request nor an explanation, just a demand. Alana found the request abrupt, but she tried to remain collected. "Certainly, officer," she said softly, reaching into the glove compartment for her registration. She then fished her wallet out of her purse to retrieve her driver's license. She handed both documents over, her hands steady despite her growing tension. Hayes barely glanced at them before barking, "Step out of the vehicle." Alana blinked in confusion. "Is there a problem, officer? Can you tell me what's going on?" she asked politely. She had observed enough of these incidents to know that the next few minutes were critical. How she acted and how he reacted would determine if this encounter escalated into something more dangerous. "No questions. Just step out," Hayes repeated, refusing to offer any rationale. The aggression in his voice was palpable, making Alana's stomach churn with dread. She unbuckled her seatbelt and slowly opened the door, keeping her hands visible. Once outside, she stood by her SUV, feeling the cool night air on her skin. At this point, it occurred to Alana that she did not have to show anything beyond her license and registration unless formally detained. Her mind flickered with recollections of her rights, not just as a citizen, but also as someone who had a higher-level security clearance. Over the years, she had carefully studied her civil liberties, fully aware that knowledge could be the strongest defense in the face of unwarranted intimidation. She also knew that in many cases, revealing her NSA affiliation often diffused tense situations. The name carried weight, and the suggestion that she was not an easy target could deter potential bullies in uniform. Still, she did not want to escalate needlessly. Alana decided to attempt polite cooperation before flashing any credentials. "Officer, I'm happy to comply, but can you please tell me why I'm being asked to step out of my car?" Hayes ignored the question. "Hands on the hood," he commanded. A flicker of a smirk touched his lips as though he relished her confusion. Alana sensed his condescension. In that moment, her instincts signaled that he might not be satisfied until he'd exerted full authority. Still, she complied, placing her palms on the cold metal of her SUV's hood. She could sense his eyes on her, scrutinizing her as if she were a criminal. Alana felt a tightness in her chest, an anger at the injustice of being treated like a suspect for no clear reason. But she remembered her training. This was not the time for emotional outbursts. From behind, Hayes patted her down, his search teetering on the edge of impropriety. As his hands ran along her sides, Alana closed her eyes, trying to remain calm, thinking of the many men and women who had suffered similar indignities without cause. "Turn around," he ordered. Once he seemed satisfied, she wasn't carrying any weapons. She turned to face him, meeting his gaze squarely for the first time. She saw something unsettling there, an unspoken hostility that suggested this stop was about more than just a routine check. "You from around here?" he asked, a sneer evident in his tone. "What are you doing out so late?" "I live in Baltimore," Alana replied. "Just finished a late shift and stopped to buy something from the store." She omitted any mention of her workplace for now, cautious about revealing her NSA affiliation prematurely. Hayes studied her face for a moment, then stepped away, scanning her SUV with his flashlight. "Open the trunk," he said. She hesitated. This request went far beyond a simple traffic stop. Alana had no desire to let him rummage through her personal belongings without probable cause. "Officer, I believe I have the right to refuse a search if there isn't probable cause," she calmly stated, recalling the advice her father once gave her about Fourth Amendment protections. "Is that so?" Hayes nearly spat the words, clearly unaccustomed to being questioned. "You think you know the law?" He stepped closer, his hand drifting toward the holster at his hip. The gesture sent a spike of alarm through Alana. This was escalating fast. Alana breathed in, steadying herself. Her father's words echoed again, "Stand tall, but do not provoke." She reached into her inside jacket pocket and pulled out her NSA credentials, her official badge, identifying her as an intelligence analyst. She held it up at eye level, letting the light of the street lamp catch the official seal. This was usually her ace in the hole, the revelation that often made other officers step back and reconsider any reckless action. For a brief moment, Hayes faltered. His eyes flickered in recognition of the federal agency insignia. But then, instead of backing down or apologizing, his sneer hardened into something almost feral. "NSA, huh?" he said with a biting sarcasm. "So, you're one of those people listening to our phone calls and reading our emails?" Alana was taken aback by his reaction. She had expected a moment of hesitation, perhaps even a courteous apology. She wondered if Hayes's hostility ran so deep that even the mention of a federal intelligence agency wouldn't deter him. "Officer," she began, choosing her words carefully, "I'm just trying to go home. I've shown you my ID and my driver's license. Could you please explain why you stopped me in the first place?" Hayes grinned, a chilling expression that spoke volumes about the dynamic he intended to maintain. "I don't answer to you," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You answer to me. I pulled you over because you look suspicious. Anyone could flash a fake badge." Alana suppressed the urge to argue. She knew she could escalate this by calling a supervisor to the scene or by making a phone call to the NSA's security team. But a part of her wanted to see just how far Hayes would go. Another part of her was angry at being harassed for no reason other than her skin color in combination with a cop's thirst for power. A silent tension stretched between them. Passers-by started noticing. A few stopped, drawn by the flashing lights and the officer's raised voice. One or two people pulled out their phones, recording the scene from a distance. That slight crowd emboldened Alana. She had been taught to rely on facts and evidence. In this digital age, a camera could be a powerful tool of accountability. Hayes seemed to sense the shift in the air. He turned to the onlookers, annoyance etched on his face. "Move along," he shouted. Nothing to see here, but the bystanders only shuffled a little further away, still recording. Their presence made a small shield of sorts, preventing Hayes from doing anything too extreme, at least not without risking public scrutiny. Alana lowered her badge, her posture still respectful but firm. "Officer, if there's no formal charge or reasonable suspicion, I'd like to continue on my way." She pointed to her license and registration, which he still clutched in one hand. "Could you please return my documents?" Hayes stared at her for a long moment, the tension in his jaw tightening. Finally, with reluctance, he thrust the documents back at her. "Fine, but don't think I'm done with you," he muttered. "I'll be keeping an eye on you." Alana thanked him softly, resisting the urge to let her frustration surface. She walked back to her driver's seat, aware that each step was being recorded by the onlookers. After she shut the door, she placed her credentials back in her jacket pocket, her hands trembling slightly with adrenaline. She had faced tense moments before, both in her personal life and in her NSA role, but it never got easier to swallow the injustice of racial profiling. Before driving off, she took a moment to steady herself. Her heart pounded, her thoughts racing about the ramifications of what had just happened. Hayes was clearly a man who thrived on intimidation, who believed in his own impunity. But Alana refused to be a victim of his prejudice or aggression. She was determined to handle this situation with the same composure and strategy she employed when dealing with high-stakes intelligence analyses. As she drove away, she spotted Hayes in her rearview mirror. He stood there, arms folded across his chest, staring after her SUV as though memorizing every detail. The image stuck in her mind, an unsettling reminder that this man posed a real threat. She couldn't quite shake the feeling that this encounter wasn't over, that it was merely the opening salvo in a conflict that might escalate further if not checked. By the time she arrived at her townhouse, the evening had gone dark, the city's streetlights offering pinpoints of illumination that felt strangely comforting. Her living room light was still on, reflecting off the plush green couch she had inherited from her grandmother. Dropping her keys on the kitchen counter, she let out a shaky breath. The ordeal with Officer Hayes reminded her, yet again, how quickly a mundane errand could turn dangerous. Still feeling the weight of the encounter, Alana decided to call one of her close friends, Vanessa, who worked as a public defender. If anyone would understand the legal ramifications of what had happened and how best to protect herself going forward, it would be Vanessa. They had gone to high school together and reconnected after college, bonding over their shared passion for justice and community upliftment. Vanessa picked up on the second ring, her voice laced with concern, the moment she heard Alana's trembling words. "He did what? Did you get his badge number?" Vanessa asked, her tone urgent. "I couldn't see it clearly," Alana replied. "I was too focused on not making a wrong move. But I have his name, Officer Randall Hayes. A few bystanders took videos, I think. Someone might have caught the badge number on camera." "Okay," Vanessa said, taking a moment to think. "Look, gather everything you remember. Write it down right now while it's fresh. And if you see any videos online, note the details. This guy might have a history. We could build a case if it comes to that." Alana felt a surge of relief. She wasn't alone in this. Between her own resources and Vanessa's expertise, perhaps they could ensure Hayes faced consequences if he stepped out of line again. After a long talk, Alana felt a bit more at ease. She thanked Vanessa and promised to keep her updated on any developments. That night, though tired, Alana found sleep elusive. Every time she closed her eyes, she recalled the intensity in Hayes's stare, the sneer on his lips. She thought about the thousands of people who faced encounters like this, daily, many without the benefit of advanced knowledge of their rights or the added layer of federal credentials. She considered herself lucky. If Hayes had been just a bit more reckless, or if there had been no witnesses around, who knew how the situation might have ended? Eventually, exhaustion claimed her, and she drifted off into a fitful sleep. But even her dreams were haunted by red and blue flashes, authoritative voices demanding subservience, and the ever-present danger that simmered under every interaction with those who abused their power. Meanwhile, miles away, Officer Randall Hayes finished his shift and returned to a cramped studio apartment. His living situation was a stark contrast to the image of a respectable officer he tried so hard to project. The apartment smelled of stale pizza and cheap air freshener, cluttered with old newspapers and discarded takeout containers. A single overhead bulb cast harsh shadows on the peeling walls. His head buzzed with thoughts of the woman he'd encountered. He told himself that she needed to be put in her place. NSA? Federal agent or not, Hayes believed that no one could outrun him. The bitterness in his life, his failing marriage, mounting debt, resentment toward the bureaucracy that left him feeling powerless, found a target in individuals like Alana. As he collapsed onto his worn couch, he resolved that their paths would cross again. And when they did, he intended to make her regret challenging him. Thus, the stage was set. Two individuals from vastly different worlds had collided in a grim reflection of systemic injustice and personal obsession. On one side stood Alana, armed with intelligence training, moral conviction, and a network of supportive friends. On the other stood Officer Hayes, embittered by life's disappointments, fueled by prejudice, and hungry for control. Their brief confrontation crackled with tension, hinting at a far larger reckoning on the horizon. In the coming days, that tension would escalate. Lives would intersect in unexpected ways. Alliances would form, and secrets long buried would threaten to rise to the surface. Yet as Alana lay in bed, she had no idea just how entangled her life would become with that of a man who represented the very forces she had vowed to protect her country against. Nor could she have predicted how a single chance encounter could set off a chain of events that would rock her city and test her loyalty to everything she held dear. Over the following days, Alana tried to push the troubling encounter to the back of her mind. She dived into her work at the NSA, analyzing digital communications tied to a rising cyber threat. One morning, however, she noticed subtle glances from her colleagues as she grabbed coffee in the break room. Typically, NSA employees were discreet, but she sensed something swirling beneath the surface. Sure enough, by lunchtime, her friend and co-worker Marcus sidled up to her desk. Leaning in, he whispered, "Hey, you okay? Words going around about some intense police encounter you had. Saw a snippet of a video on social media." Alana's stomach dropped. She had known that the bystanders' footage might circulate online, but she hadn't expected it to reach her colleagues so quickly. Taking a steadying breath, she nodded, "I'm fine." It was an unfortunate run-in with a cop who, let's just say, he was overstepping his authority. Marcus's gaze was understanding. "I forwarded it to our security liaison, not to stir up trouble, but because your face is in it, and it's garnered quite a bit of attention locally. People are discussing your credentials." "Just wonderful," Alana murmured, rubbing her temple. She was obligated to report any incident that might expose her identity or compromise her position. Resigning herself to the formalities, she drafted a quick report detailing what happened, then emailed it to the NSA's Internal Affairs Office. It was standard procedure for employees to document any law enforcement encounters that could lead to public scrutiny. Her phone buzzed minutes later, a message from NSA security requesting a follow-up meeting. That was fast, she thought. The agency seldom wasted time when an employee's security clearance or public image was at stake. The prospect of being questioned by her own superiors made her uneasy, but she understood the necessity. Better to be transparent now than risk the agency learning about the details secondhand. That afternoon, Alana sat in a small conference room with two internal security officers. They were polite but unyielding in their questions. When she showed them the circulated video clip, they pressed for details. Had the officer recognized her as an NSA employee? Had she used her credentials to influence or obstruct an investigation? Did she feel targeted? She answered each query carefully. Yes, I displayed my badge to de-escalate the situation, not to obstruct anything. She clarified. As soon as I realized he wasn't backing down, I stopped pressing the issue and just tried to leave. The officers nodded, taking notes. They assured her that the NSA would monitor the situation and that her personal information was secure. However, the scrutiny didn't stop at her workplace. Vanessa, her friend the public defender, reached out with updates. Alana, I've been getting calls from community activists who saw the video. They want you to speak out. There's talk of pressuring the Baltimore Police Department to investigate this Officer Hayes. Alana felt a jolt of mixed emotions. On one hand, she believed in standing up against injustice. Yet her job at the NSA required discretion. Publicly speaking out could compromise her role. Vanessa, I can't have my face splashed all over the news. That could jeopardize my clearance and my work, she said softly, her voice tinged with regret. I'll cooperate with any official investigation, but I can't become the poster child for police reform. Vanessa understood, though disappointment was evident in her tone. I get it, but just so you know, your silence might look like fear or acceptance to people who don't understand your situation. Alana swallowed hard, hating the sense of being boxed in. I know. Let's just keep an eye on things for now. As days turned into a week, the video continued to gain traction on local social media channels, especially among activists pushing for transparency in policing. Officer Hayes' name surfaced in various community forums, where his pattern of dubious stops was being openly discussed. Civil rights organizations demanded an internal investigation. Local news outlets sniffed around, hoping to interview the woman in the video. So far, no one had connected Alana's name to the footage, just the label of NSA employee who flashed her credentials. For the moment, her privacy held, but she knew that could change in an instant. Meanwhile, within the Baltimore Police Department, the top brass noticed the mounting public pressure. The commissioner's office quietly asked an internal affairs unit to look into the incident. Thus, Officer Randall Hayes found himself summoned for questioning. At first, Hayes dismissed it as routine. Then he realized that the investigators knew more than he expected. They had seen the footage, spoken to witnesses, and documented a pattern in his files, complaints from multiple citizens over the years. Sitting in a stark interview room, Hayes fumed at the questions. I was just doing my job, he insisted, crossing his arms. She seemed suspicious, and I exercised my right to check her out. That's policing. You'd rather we ignore potential threats? One of the investigators, a level-headed woman named Sergeant Monroe, kept her expression neutral. Officer Hayes, the video shows you ordering her out of the car without providing any explanation, refusing to clarify the nature of the stop and searching her person more thoroughly than procedure suggests. Can you articulate your probable cause? He leaned forward, anger tightening his features. This woman was parked in a high-crime area, rummaging around in her vehicle. For all I knew, she could have been armed or stashing drugs. And let's not forget, she flashed what could have been a counterfeit badge. Monroe exchanged a glance with her partner. And you have evidence that she was doing anything illegal other than looking for something in her purse? Hayes's silence spoke volumes. He knew the interview was a mere formality. He had allies within the department and the police union, who often shielded officers from severe consequences. Yet, for the first time, a prickle of worry crept under his skin. The community outcry was growing too loud to be ignored, and the woman in question had connections to the federal government. This might not blow over as easily as past incidents. That night, fueled by resentment and a few glasses of cheap whiskey, Hayes decided to take matters into his own hands. He opened his laptop and scrolled through social media, looking for the viral clip of their altercation. The comment sections boiled with fury, dozens, maybe hundreds, calling for his badge. He clenched his teeth in anger. "So, you want to ruin my life," he muttered, staring at the video freeze frame of Alana's face. "Let's see how you like it when the tables are turned." Hayes was no stranger to intelligence tactics, though he lacked official training. He began combing through every scrap of data he could find about the incident timestamps on social media posts, the convenience store's location, details about the black SUV. Nothing specific about Alana had surfaced publicly, but rumor had it she worked for the NSA. With enough digging, maybe he could learn more. Over the next few days, he lurked in online forums frequented by conspiracy theorists who constantly discussed government agencies. He searched for any mention of an NSA female in Baltimore who might match Alana's appearance. He found little of substance, but that didn't stop him from rifling through different corners of the web, desperately seeking any clue to her identity. It wasn't long before a new development added to the tension. Local news stations began airing segments on police accountability, referencing the viral video as a key example. Though Alana's face was blurred and her name withheld, the coverage increased public pressure on the Baltimore PD. Calls for Hayes' suspension or termination grew louder. Protesters started planning to gather at the precinct. The department felt cornered, eager to find a swift resolution. During one newscast, the reporter mentioned that the woman in the video had high-level security clearance. Hayes sat in his apartment, watching the broadcast with a twisted grin. "Security clearance, huh? Maybe you think you're untouchable," he hissed at the TV. "We'll see about that." Little did he know, his unrelenting quest for revenge would soon set off a chain reaction he couldn't control. His actions were about to collide with the NSA's protective measures and Alana's personal resolve. When federal and local jurisdictions intertwined and lines were crossed, the consequences could be far more destructive than either of them imagined. In the midst of this turbulence, Alana felt the weight of an impending storm. Though her name remained out of the spotlight, every newscast that mentioned an NSA employee sent a ripple of anxiety through her. She couldn't help but worry that the next broadcast might expose her identity. On top of that, her superiors at the agency were keeping a close watch, concerned that public attention on one of their own could become a liability. One afternoon, Alana received a text from Vanessa. "We need to talk ASAP. Urgent." Alana's pulse quickened as she hurried to meet her friend at a small coffee shop near the courthouse. The place was relatively quiet. The muted hum of conversation provided them a sense of privacy. Vanessa wasted no time. "I just heard from a contact in the police department. They suspect Hayes is digging for personal information about you. There's talk of him poking around in departmental databases, trying to run license plates and scouring social media." Apparently he's not being discreet. Alana's stomach knotted. Great. So he's violating protocol and possibly the law just to fine me. Vanessa nodded gravely. "It's more than that." The contact said, "He's been bragging about wanting to make you regret standing up to him. It's all talk for now, but who knows what he'll do if he finds out where you live." Alana took a slow sip of her tea, hands trembling. She recalled NSA protocols for staff under personal threat. With her clearance came certain resources, like protective measures or even relocation if necessary. But she loathed the idea of uprooting her life or living in fear because of one twisted cop. "I'll inform the NSA security office," Alana decided. "They might be able to intervene legally. And Vanessa. If he keeps snooping and crosses the line, I want him held accountable." Vanessa agreed, her face set with quiet determination. They parted ways, both aware that they were walking a tightrope between legal recourse and the risk of provoking Hayes further. That very evening, Alana received an unexpected phone call. The number was blocked. Her instincts screamed caution, but she answered anyway, suspecting it might be an official agency contact. Silence greeted her, followed by heavy breathing. Then a gravelly voice she recognized all too well spoke. "You think you're smart, don't you? Hiding behind your fancy federal badge." A pause. "I'll find you." Her grip on the phone tightened. "Officer Hayes, is that you?" she demanded, anger and fear surging in equal measure. He gave a low chuckle. "You want to run to your Fed buddies? Go ahead. We'll see how this plays out." Then the line went dead. Alana's heart hammered against her ribcage. She immediately contacted NSA security, detailing the call. They assured her they'd look into it, though they warned her to remain vigilant. The next day, Alana was pulled aside by her supervisor, Director Pauline Schwartz, who oversaw a critical division of data analysis. Schwartz wasted no pleasantries. "Alana, I've been briefed about your situation. First, I want you to know we have your back. Second, we need to ensure this doesn't spiral into a public relations nightmare. You're an asset to this organization, and we take threats against our staff seriously." Alana nodded. "Thank you, Director. I'm trying to keep a low profile, but he keeps pushing. I'm worried about what he might do if he discovers my address. We're coordinating with the Baltimore PD's internal affairs. They've assured us that if there's evidence of Hayes using departmental resources illegally, he'll be disciplined. In the meantime, consider staying somewhere else, maybe a friend's or a family member's place. We can assign an agency security detail if you'd prefer." Though grateful for the offer, Alana hesitated. She valued her independence and didn't want to drag her loved ones into a dangerous situation. "I'll think about it," she said at last. "If it escalates further, I'll accept the detail." In truth, she already had a plan. She'd pack an overnight bag and stay with Vanessa for a while, at least until Hayes' investigation. Or vendetta lost steam. It wasn't an ideal arrangement, but safer than sleeping alone in her townhouse with an unhinged officer on the loose. Late that night, she tossed clothes into a small suitcase, her mind reeling. She glanced around her home, wondering when she'd feel truly safe there again. Meanwhile, Hayes was burning the candle at both ends. He had discovered that his repeated queries about the unidentified NSA woman were raising eyebrows, but he didn't care. Fueled by anger, he doubled down, determined to dig up anything that could tarnish Alana or intimidate her into silence. He combed through local vehicle records, memorizing partial plates that matched her SUV's description. He even staked out the convenience store where their encounter had taken place, questioning the cashier for any detail that might lead him to Alana. The older man refused to cooperate, unnerved by Hayes' aggressive questioning. Word spread quickly among the neighborhood's residents, further undermining the police department's credibility. As if to pour fuel on the fire, public protests against police misconduct began to escalate. Outside the precinct where Hayes worked, demonstrators gathered with signs reading "End racial profiling and hold cops accountable." Tensions flared, with some calling specifically for Hayes' dismissal. Sensing a potential powder keg, the police commissioner held an urgent meeting with the union reps. If they couldn't douse the public outrage, they risked major unrest. The union's spokesperson, a seasoned officer named Lieutenant Beckett, had a sterling reputation and the knack for diffusing crises. But even Beckett struggled to defend Hayes's track record when confronted with undeniable video evidence and a rising tide of community anger. Behind closed doors, Beckett confronted Hayes. "You're putting us all at risk," he snapped. "We're going out on a limb to protect you, and you repay us by stoking the fire? Back off. Stop looking for this woman. Let internal affairs do their job." Hayes bristled at the reprimand, but feigned compliance. "Understood, sir," he mumbled, without a shred of genuine remorse. Yet that night, after the precinct cleared out, Hayes slipped into the records room. He knew security cameras covered the main hallway, but he was careful, having cased the angles earlier. Inside, he accessed a computer terminal using credentials he'd lifted from a colleague who rarely changed his password. Such infiltration wasn't child's play, but Hayes prided himself on cunning. He searched for any lead tied to the black SUV from the convenience store footage, scanning for distinctive license plate patterns that matched the partial coverage he'd gleaned from the viral video. Fortune favored him in that moment of reckless violation. He found a match, a black SUV registered to an Alana Mitchell. The address listed was in the heart of Baltimore. That name, Alana, rang a bell from the old man at the store. He had let it slip, that the woman's name might be something like Alana or Elena. Close enough. A surge of triumph coursed through Hayes. He jotted the address on a slip of paper, heart pounding with vindictive excitement. As he replaced the records, he convinced himself this was justice, that Alana was some cunning trickster trying to sabotage his career. He'd show her who held true power in these streets. The next evening found Alana at Vanessa's apartment, both women watching a movie to distract themselves. Alana's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Her gut clenched when she read it. "Hi, Alana. Nice place you have on Green Street. Hope nothing happens to it." Her face paled. Vanessa, noticing the shift in Alana's expression, paused the movie. "What is it?" Alana showed her the text. Vanessa's eyes flashed with alarm. "That's a direct threat. He must have found your address." Pushing aside her rising panic, Alana dialed the NSA's security office. The next few hours were a blur of tense phone calls and urgent updates. The Baltimore PD's Internal Affairs Unit was notified of the breach. Investigators confirmed that someone had accessed departmental records after hours, leaving digital footprints pointing squarely at Hayes's use of a colleague's login credentials. Within 48 hours, a flurry of action took place. Hayes was placed on administrative leave, pending the outcome of the internal investigation. The news spread quickly through the department and the community. Many felt a sense of relief, but Alana wasn't entirely comforted. Suspensions could be lifted and punitive measures reversed. She feared Hayes might grow even more desperate. Indeed, the humiliation of being suspended only inflamed Hayes's rage. His phone rang off the hook with calls from the union, from journalists seeking comments, from angry citizens mocking him. He retreated into a hateful bubble, nursing fantasies of revenge. One rainy evening, he drove past Alana's townhouse under cover of darkness, idling at the curb like a phantom. The curtains were drawn, and no lights shone within, but just seeing the building was enough to fuel his obsession. Less than a week after his suspension, official word came down. Hayes faced possible termination for unauthorized database access, in addition to the fresh allegations of harassment and intimidation. A preliminary hearing was scheduled, during which evidence would be presented: video, witness statements, and digital forensics linking him to the illegal search. Alana, still staying with Vanessa, learned of this development through the NSA security liaison. Though she felt cautious optimism that justice might finally prevail, a small, nagging voice in her mind warned that a man cornered might lash out in desperation. Sure enough, Hayes refused to go quietly. Late one night, a battered sedan pulled up outside Vanessa's apartment building. Hayes, slumped behind the wheel, watched windows on the second floor flicker with television light. He guessed Alana might be inside. His mind churned with scenarios, some rational, most not. He pictured confronting her, berating her for ruining his life, maybe even scaring her so badly she'd never consider speaking out again. But Hayes wasn't the only one watching. A discreet black SUV with tinted windows was parked across the street. Inside sat two NSA security agents assigned to keep tabs on Alana's safety. They noticed the sedan almost immediately, its driver suspiciously scanning the building. When they ran the plates, their suspicions were confirmed. The vehicle was registered under a relative of Randall Hayes. They alerted local patrol units to stand by. Unaware he was under observation, Hayes eventually stepped out of the sedan, a dark silhouette against the streetlight's glow. He took a few steps toward the building's entrance. But before he could cross the sidewalk, a marked police cruiser turned onto the street. Hayes froze, torn between brazen defiance and the instinct to avoid immediate arrest. He chose retreat, hurrying back into his car. The NSA agents kept their distance, neither wanting to provoke a chase nor risk harming bystanders. The police cruiser rolled past at a normal pace, but the mere presence of law enforcement was enough to spook Hayes. Moments later, he sped off into the night. By the time the cruiser looped back around, he was gone. Within the next 24 hours, the NSA security detail updated Alana on the attempted visit. Fear and anger warred within her. She felt violated in a deeply personal way. Even a well-lit, bustling city street didn't guarantee safety from a man so determined to scare her. A formal protective order was swiftly obtained, barring Hayes from coming within 1,000 feet of Alana or her known associates. Violating it would lead to immediate arrest. Internal Affairs, armed with the new information, expedited the hearing. Under mounting pressure, the police union began to distance itself from Hayes. His actions had become indefensible in the public eye. On the day of the internal hearing, Alana was asked to provide a statement. She arrived with a small entourage of supporters, Vanessa, Marcus from the NSA, and two agency security officers. The proceedings were closed to the public, but the tension in the air felt oppressive. Hayes sat at the defense table, eyes brimming with barely suppressed hatred, directed at Alana as she testified. She recounted each interaction meticulously, from the initial stop to the threatening phone call and text messages. Her voice wavered slightly, but she never lost composure. Next, the department's internal investigators presented digital evidence of Hayes's unauthorized data searches and his suspicious presence outside Vanessa's apartment. They played excerpts of the viral video, along with statements from bystanders who had witnessed his harassment of Alana. The weight of the evidence seemed undeniable. When it was Hayes's turn to speak, he launched into a diatribe about how he was just doing his job, how Alana was a government puppet, how the system was rigged against good cops. His words only dug him deeper into a hole, revealing the prejudice and vindictiveness that had driven his actions. By the hearing's end, the verdict was clear. Officer Randall Hayes would be dismissed from the Baltimore Police Department, effective immediately. Furthermore, he faced potential criminal charges for unauthorized access to law enforcement databases and harassment, which could lead to fines or even jail time if found guilty. The hearing committee recommended that the case be forwarded to the district attorney for possible prosecution. Alana felt tears of relief prick her eyes. Justice in such cases was rare. Too often, cops accused of misconduct slipped through the cracks. She left the hearing room buoyed by the support of her friends, feeling a burden lift that she hadn't realized was crushing her spirit. Yet amid the relief, a new awareness took root. The hearing might be over, but Hayes's personal vendetta could still simmer. That was the nature of obsession. It rarely ended cleanly. Still, for the moment, Alana savored the sense of vindication. She had stood up against someone who embodied the worst of law enforcement, and the system, flawed as it was, had taken steps to hold him accountable. The journey hadn't been easy, but it underscored a truth she'd always believed. Knowledge of one's rights, combined with unwavering resolve, could tip the scales of justice, even if only by an inch. As the weeks passed, life gradually returned to normal for Alana. Free from the looming threat of Hayes' harassment, she moved back into her own home, finding solace in the familiar walls that once felt so vulnerable. With renewed focus, she continued her work at the NSA, driven by a deeper appreciation for the delicate balance between security and personal freedom. While the legal wheels turned against Hayes, leading to formal charges that could reshape his future, Alana stood testament to the power of standing firm in the face of injustice. Now, as we close this intense chapter, take a moment to reflect on what you've witnessed: a hard battle against prejudice, a triumph of accountability, and the unwavering courage that fueled it all. If you found hope or inspiration in Alana's story, please remember to hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more gripping stories ahead.